Chapter 23. An Open Door. Miss Royal looked at Emily for a moment. Then she seized her wrist, shut the door, drew her back into the parlor, and firmly pushed her down into the Morris chair. This done, Miss Royal threw herself on the muddy davenport and began to laugh, long and helplessly. Once or twice she rocked herself forward, gave Emily's knee 2 wild whacks, then rocked back and continued to laugh. Emily sat, smiling faintly. Her feelings had been too deeply harrowed to permit of Miss Royal's convulsions of mirth. But already there was glimmering in her mind a sketch for her Jimmy buck. Meanwhile, the white dog, having chewed the tidy to tatters, spied the cat again, and again rushed after her. Finally, Miss Royal sat erect and wiped her eyes. "Oh, this is priceless, Emily Birdstar, priceless. When I'm 80, I'll recall this and howl over it. Who will write it up, you or I? But who does own that brute?" "I'm sure I don't know," said Emily demurely. "I never saw him in my life before." "Well, let's shut the door before he can return. And now, dear thing, sit here beside me. There's one clean spot here under the cushion. We are going to have our real talk now. Oh, I was so beastly to you when you were trying to ask me questions. I was trying to be beastly. Why didn't you throw something at me, you poor insulted darling?" "I wanted to, but now I think you let me off very easily, considering the behavior of my supposed dog." Miss Royal went off in another convulsion. "I don't know if I can forgive you for thinking that horrid curly white creature was my glorious red gold chow. I'll take you up to my room before you go, and you shall apologize to him. He's asleep on my bed. I locked him there to relieve dear Aunt Angela's mind about her cat. Choo-Chin wouldn't hurt the cat. He merely wants to play with her, and the foolish old thing runs. Now, you know, when a cat runs, a dog simply can't help chasing her. As Kipling tells us, he wouldn't be a proper dog if he didn't. If only that white fiend had confined himself to chasing the cat." "It is too bad about Mrs. Royal's begonia," said Emily regretfully. "Yes, that is a pity. Aunt Angela's had it for years. But I'll get her a new one. When I saw you coming up the walk with that dog frisking around you, of course I concluded he was yours. I had put on my favorite dress because it really makes me look almost beautiful, and I wanted you to love me. And when the beast muddied it all over, and you never said a word of rebuke or apology, I simply went into one of my cold rages. I do go into them. I can't help it. It's one of my little faults. But I soon thaw out if no fresh aggravation occurs. In this case, fresh aggravation occurred every minute. I vowed to myself that if you did not even try to make your dog behave, I would not suggest that you should. And I suppose you were indignant because I calmly let my dog spoil your violets and eat your manuscripts." "I was. It's too bad about the manuscripts. Perhaps we can find them. He can't really have swallowed them, but I suppose he has chewed them to bits." "It doesn't matter. I have other copies at home." "And your questions! Emily, you were too delicious. Did you really write down my answers?" "Word for word. I meant to print them just so, too. Mr. Towers had given me a list of questions for you, but of course I didn't mean to fire them off point blank like that. I meant to weave them artfully into our conversation as we went along. But here comes Mrs. Royal." Mrs. Royal came in, smiling. Her face changed as she saw the begonia. But Miss Royal interposed quickly. "Dearest Auntie, don't weep or faint. At least, not before you've told me who around here owns a white, curly, utterly mannerless, devilish dog." "Lily Bates," said Mrs. Royal in a tone of despair. "Oh, has she let that creature out again? I had a most terrible time with him before you came. He's really just a big puppy, and he can't behave. I told her finally if I caught him over here again, I'd poison him. She's kept him shut up since then. But now, oh, my lovely Rex. Well, this dog came in with Emily. I supposed he was her dog. Courtesy to a guest implies courtesy to her dog. Isn't there an old proverb that expresses it more concisely? He embraced me fervently upon his entrance, as my dearest dress testifies. He marked up your Davenport, he tore off Emily's violets, he chased your cat, he overturned your begonia, he broke your vase, he ran off with our chicken. I groan, Aunt Angela, he did. And yet I, determinedly composed and courteous, said not a word of protest. I vow my behavior was worthy of New Moon itself, wasn't it, Emily? You were just too mad to speak, said Mrs. Royal ruefully, fingering her wrecked begonia. Miss Royal stole a sly glance at Emily. You see, I can't put anything over on Aunt Angela. She knows me too well. I admit I was not my usual charming self. But, Auntie darling, I'll get you a new vase and a new begonia. Think of all the fun you'll have coaxing it along. Anticipation is always so much more interesting than realization. I'll settle Lily Bates, said Mrs. Royal, going out of the room to look for a dustpan. Now, dear thing, let's gab, said Miss Royal, snuggling down beside Emily. This was the Miss Royal of the letter. Emily found no difficulty in talking to her. They had a jolly hour, and at the end of it, Miss Royal made a proposition that took away Emily's breath. Emily, I want you to come back to New York with me in July. There is a vacancy on the staff of The Ladies' Own. No great thing in itself. You'll be sort of general handyman, and all odd jobs will be turned over to you. But you'll have a chance to work up. And you'll be in the center of things. You can write. I realized that the moment I read The Woman Who Spanked the King. I know the editor of Roche's, and I found out who you were and where you lived. That's really why I came down this spring. I wanted to get hold of you. You mustn't waste your life here. It would be a crime. Oh, of course, I know New Moon is a dear, quaint, lovely spot, full of poetry and steeped in romance. It was just the place for you to spend your childhood in. But you must have a chance to grow and develop and be yourself. You must have the stimulus of association with great minds, the training that only a great city can give. Come with me. If you do, I promise you that in 10 years' time, Emily Bird Starr will be a name to conjure with among the magazines of America. Emily sat in a maze of bewilderment, too confused and dazzled to think clearly. She had never dreamed of this. It was as if Miss Royal had suddenly put into her hand a key to unlock the door into the world of all her dreams and hopes and imaginings. Beyond that door was all she had ever hoped for of success and fame. And yet, what faint odd resentment stirred at the back of all her whirling sensations? Was there a sting in Miss Royal's calm assumption that if Emily did not go with her, her name would forever remain unknown? Did the old dead and gone Murrays turn over in their graves at the whisper that one of their descendants could never succeed without the help and pull of a stranger? Or had Miss Royal's manner been a shade too patronizing? Whatever it was, it kept Emily from figuratively flinging herself at Miss Royal's feet. "Oh, Miss Royal, that would be wonderful," she faltered. "I'd love to go, but I'm afraid Aunt Elizabeth will never consent. She'll say I'm too young." "How old are you?" 17. I was 18 when I went. I didn't know a soul in New York. I had just enough money to keep me for 3 months. I was a crude, callow little thing, yet I won out. You shall live with me. I'll look after you as well as Aunt Elizabeth herself could do. Tell her I'll guard you like the apple of my eye. I have a dear cozy little flat where we'll be as happy as queens, with my adored and adorable Chuchin. You'll love Chuchin, Emily." "I think I'd like a cat better," said Emily firmly. "Cats? Oh, we couldn't have a cat in a flat. It wouldn't be amenable enough to discipline. You must sacrifice your pussies on the altar of your art. I'm sure you'll like living with me. I'm very kind and amiable, dearest, when I feel like it. And I generally do feel like it. And I never lose my temper. It freezes up occasionally, but as I told you, it thaws quickly. I bear other people's misfortunes with equanimity, and I never tell anyone she has a cold or that she looks tired. Oh, I'd really make an adorable housemate." "I'm sure you would," said Emily, smiling. "I never saw a young girl before that I wanted to live with," said Miss Royal. "You have a sort of luminous personality, Emily. You'll give off light in dull places and in purple drab spots. Now do make up your mind to come with me." "It is Aunt Elizabeth's mind that must be made up," said Emily ruefully. "If she says I can go, I'll—" Emily found herself stopping suddenly. "Go," finished Miss Royal joyfully. "Aunt Elizabeth will come around. I'll go and have a talk with her. I'll go out to Newman with you next Friday night. You must have your chance." "I can't thank you enough, Miss Royal, so I won't try. But I must go now. I'll think this all over. I'm too dazzled just now to think at all. You don't know what this means to me." "I think I do," said Miss Royal gently. "I was once a young girl in Shrewsbury, eating my heart out because I had no chance." "But you made your own chance and won out," said Emily wistfully. "Yes, but I had to go away to do it. I could never have got anywhere here. And it was a horribly hard climb at first. It took my youth. I want to save you some of the hardships and discouragements. You will go far beyond what I have done. You can create. I can only build with the materials others have made. But we builders have our place. We can make temples for gods and goddesses, if nothing else. Come with me, dear girl Emily, and I will do all I can to help you in every way." Thank you," was all Emily could say. Tears of gratitude for this offer of ungrudging help and sympathy were in her eyes. She had not received too much of sympathy or encouragement in her life. It touched her deeply. She went away feeling that she must turn the key and open the magic door, beyond which now seemed to lie all the beauty and allurement of life. If only Aunt Elizabeth would let her go. "I can't do it if she doesn't approve," decided Emily. Halfway home, she suddenly stopped and laughed. After all, Miss Royal had forgotten to show her Chuchin. But it doesn't matter, she thought, because in the first place, I can't believe that, after this, I'll ever feel any real interest in chow dogs. And in the second place, I'll see him often enough if I go to New York with Miss Royal.